It's 4 a.m. and you're sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. If you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The FDA has granted the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine full approval. How could this change the game?
Public health officials hope that by giving the vaccine full approval, that hesitant populations will feel more comfortable taking the vaccine.
And Bitcoin is back on a run. What's behind it? Plus, how Target and Disney are teaming up on holiday toys. It's Monday, August 23rd. I'm Charlie Turner for the Wall Street Journal, filling in for Anne-Marie Fertoli. This is the PM edition of What's News, the top headlines and business stories that moved the world today. Utility crews throughout the Northeast are working to restore power to thousands of customers impacted by Tropical Storm Henri. The storm made landfall along the coast of Rhode Island midday Sunday, causing heavy rains and widespread flooding. Henri is now a tropical depression, but forecasters warn that rains and flash floods may continue to hit parts of the Northeast as the storm slowly dissipates. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has announced that all teachers and staff in the nation's largest school district will be required to get at least one COVID-19 vaccine dose within 2 weeks of school starting in September. The announcement came following the Food and Drug Administration's full approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine earlier today. The city had previously said that teachers would have to receive the shots or be tested weekly for the virus. But Monday's policy goes further and means they won't be able to opt out except for those receiving medical and religious exemptions. Teachers won't be able to work from home because New York City isn't offering a remote option. Meanwhile, we report that Chevron has begun requiring thousands of its employees to receive COVID-19 vaccinations. And according to people familiar with the matter, the oil giant is evaluating mandates throughout its entire workforce. The oil and gas industry has been contending with rising infections, and outbreaks of the virus have recently been affecting the company's operations in key sites, such as the offshore platforms of the Gulf of Mexico and the Permian Basin of Texas and New Mexico. Chevron's decision came ahead of the FDA's full approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. We'll have more on how that decision will impact the nation's vaccination campaign and business decisions later in the show. The State Department says it doesn't know exactly how many Americans are still left on the ground in Afghanistan, as the U.S. rushes to evacuate everyone before the planned withdrawal on August 31st. Some estimate that between 10,000 and 15,000 Americans were there when the evacuations began, but government officials say the exact number has been hard to assess. In addition, experts say tens of thousands of Afghans are seeking refuge. Our national security reporter Gordon Lubold says the time crunch and huge demand are part of the reason that the Biden administration has called on U.S. commercial airlines and others in private industry to help.
There's a number of other entities that are involved in this whole mass evacuation of Afghans from the Kabul airport. There's defense contractors and there's, NGOs. This is the first sign of the American government compelling industry to help in this, what it amounts to a national emergency. If you recall from last year, during the height of the pandemic, there was a lot of debate about implementing what was called the Defense Production Act. And that was where then President Donald Trump could compel industry to make ventilators, for example, or face masks or whatever else might have been needed at the time. This, the craft, the civilian Reserve Air Fleet is actually part of the Defense Production Act, and it works somewhat in a similar way in which people industry can be compelled to act in the national interest at the direction of the U.S. government. So that's what we're seeing here for the first time in a bigger way.
And Bitcoin prices topped $50,000 for the first time in 3 months today. Here's our markets reporter, Caitlin Ostroff.
It's a massive turning point because we had Bitcoin have its massive run-up earlier this year, the first 4 months, and then mid-April peaked out around $65,000. Since then, it's really struggled for traction, and so a lot of people are looking at this as potentially the next leg to another Bitcoin rally. Whether that is sustained, we'll see. It looks like to some degree it's been picked up by retail traders, and we know from the journals Robinhood and GameStop and other coverage that a lot of those movements can be fleeting. But if it is sustained, people are looking at maybe Bitcoin being able to post new records within the next couple of months. And so it could be a turning point in sentiment, but I think it's still a bit too early to know.
Coming up, how the FDA's full approval of a COVID-19 vaccine could impact vaccination mandates.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
The Food and Drug Administration today gave full approval of Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine. It's the first COVID shot to gain full FDA clearance and was approved for people 16 years and older. FDA approval comes 8 months after it granted emergency authorization, and it also comes amid a surge in cases tied to the Delta variant of COVID-19. Let's talk more about what the FDA's full approval means for the nation's vaccination campaign with our pharmaceutical industry reporter, Jared Hopkins. Jared, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How much pressure was the FDA under to grant full approval for a COVID-19 vaccine? Would you consider this a fast process?
Pfizer submitted for approval in May, early May, and this approval comes less than 4 months after that. That is much faster than the typical drug application review process under normal times for the FDA. Usually, new drug approvals get up to 10 months for approval. So this did go faster, but the FDA moved quickly. They assigned extra personnel and devoted additional resources to this process, as they are expected to do with the other COVID vaccines once they're under review.
Can you tell us how important full approval is versus emergency use authorization, which is the clearance that all the COVID vaccines up to this point had received? What will the immediate impact of full approval be?
Public health officials hope that by giving the vaccine full approval, that hesitant populations will feel more comfortable taking the vaccine. That's one. The other important element here is that a lot of vaccine requirements or vaccine mandates from institutions, from businesses, were waiting for a full approval in order to go ahead with a vaccine requirement or a vaccine mandate. The other thing that will change now is that Pfizer will be able to market the vaccine directly to doctors and to the general public under emergency use authorization, which is sort of a special status during public health crises. The FDA is permitted to restrict such communication as advertising and that sort of thing.
How do you think this will change the acceptance of the COVID-19 vaccine among skeptics, but also local governments and businesses?
There are some individuals who were a little cautious about the vaccine under the emergency use designation. And these individuals have said in polls and other surveys that they were waiting for a full FDA approval, green light, in order to feel comfortable. At the same time, vaccination requirements and mandates have been sort of accelerating and picking up, both in government agencies that are requiring government workers to get vaccinated, as well as, private sector companies, whether it's Walmart or Tyson or Uber, that are requiring some employees to be vaccinated. There are some laws that have prohibited vaccination mandates. Some of these have actually only been applied under emergency use authorization. So those laws might not apply any longer since Pfizer's now got full FDA approval for the vaccine. Historically, across the U.S., vaccines have been required by employers, by schools, for decades. So none of that is new. Of course, those are full approved vaccines that have been required. So that's where things are going to change a little bit here. How exactly and for each state or each government agency is probably going to depend on that jurisdiction.
And finally, Jared, what about rival vaccines such as the Moderna shot and the Johnson & Johnson? Can we expect full approval sometime soon for those as well?
Moderna is in the process of submitting its approval application. A decision on that is expected in the coming weeks, short term. Johnson & Johnson has not formally begun submitting a approval application. They say that they plan to do that by the end of the year. Just keep in mind that Johnson & Johnson was farther behind than Pfizer and Moderna when it got its emergency use authorization.
Wall Street Journal pharmaceutical industry reporter Jared Hopkins. Jared, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, retailers are already getting primed for holiday shopping. Target says it will triple the number of Disney shops in its stores to more than 160 in the U.S. and offer a selection of Target-only Disney toys and games ahead of the holiday season. Our reporter Dave Sebastian says the move is part of a larger shop-in-shop trend where big stores carve out space for specific brands.
Target itself has struck deals with other brands like cosmetics retailer Ulta Beauty. And now when Target first announced this shop-in-shop arrangement with Disney in 2019, the company said that they shared an overlap in catering to families. So now the companies decided to expand Disney's footprint inside Target as Target has seen a pickup in toy sales recently. That is something that was echoed last week by Macy's, which decided to bring in Toys R Us inside about 400 stores next year. And that is also effectively a comeback for Toys R Us, which filed for bankruptcy in 2017.
And that's what's news for this Monday afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow morning. If you like our show, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Turner for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.